Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Kevin Snyder, and I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Indio. And joining from the city is our Jesus Gomez, Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager, and Leila Namvar, Senior Planner. We're also being assisted this evening by Matt Herrera with our Information Technology Department. He's the superstar running everything technological for us this evening. And with that, I'm going to take a moment and let one of our team members translate what I just said into Spanish.
Hola y bienvenidos. Hoy en la noche tenemos a Kevin Snyder, Jesús Gómez y Leila Namvar de la ciudad de Indio y de parte de la consultoría DUDEC que estamos ayudando a la ciudad de Indio con su actualización de elemento de vivienda. Yo soy Erika Van Sikel y tenemos a Shannon Wages.
At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon and Erica with DUDEC, and they're going to lead us through a presentation and a discussion this evening on the city's housing element update.
Okay. Just a minute here. Okay, can you see my screen, Erica? Does it look?
Yes, your
presentation is up?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Okay. So good evening, everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to meet with us tonight to discuss the housing element update for the City of Indio. Housing is such an important topic right now because we are facing a statewide housing crisis, and solving this crisis really is a collective responsibility. So thank you again for attending, and we welcome your input and ideas concerning housing issues in Indio. Erica, do you want to translate?
Hola y bienvenidos. Gracias por acompañarnos hoy en la noche. Agradecemos a todos ustedes que pudieron unirse a la reunión. Bueno, queremos hablar de un tema muy importante hoy, de la vivienda y el crisis que estamos viendo en California. Vamos a empezar con un overview de la presentación y seguiremos de ahí.
So first we'll go through an overview of Zoom. For those that are new to using this format, I'll then do an overview of the project, followed by a broad overview highlighting some statistics at the state level and what has driven the cost of housing so high, and then some local context. Concluding all of that, we'll pause to ask some questions, and then we'll wrap up with a description of next steps and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Entonces, primero les daremos una introducción general de Zoom para los que no lo hayan usado anteriormente. Después vamos a presentarles una descripción del proyecto general, como les mencioné, y algunas estadísticas a nivel estatal y luego más local. Y concluyendo todo esto, vamos a tomar unos minutos para hacerles una encuesta y después vamos a terminar con vamos a tener una discusión abierta para preguntas y respuestas.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a little Zoom orientation. If you can modify your...
sorry. No. Vamos a empezar con una introducción general de Zoom. Go ahead, Shannon.
All right, so you'll see your name as a participant, as an attendee of the workshop. So you can modify your name by clicking on participants at the bottom and using the More button, hit rename and edit your name. So you can go ahead and do that and tell us where you're from, who you're with, if that's of interest to you.
Pueden modificar su nombre haciendo clic en el botón que dice participantes o participants, si está en inglés, en la parte inferior, y usando el botón de more o más y renombrándose. Y pueden ver que todos los participantes tienen un asterisco, una estrella delante de su nombre para que todos puedan ver quién está presentando.
It's best to use your computer audio. I'm using my phone audio because I'm having computer issues. So at the bottom where you see the mute button on the left, you can use computer audio or press the switch to phone audio and either call the number or have Zoom call you.
Es mejor usar el audio de su computadora, entonces pueden usar el audio como ven en la pantalla, pero también tienen la opción de usar el audio del teléfono si quieren llamar el número que proporciona Zoom.
It's best also to view the presentation in full screen, and you can do that by either double-clicking on the open window or clicking the square box at the top right corner of the Zoom window. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Housing Element website afterwards, and you can see on the screen the link to that website. If you are having any issues using Zoom, please use the Q&A tool for technical help.
Les recomendamos ver la presentación en pantalla completa, lo cual pueden hacer siguiendo las instrucciones en la pantalla. Y les queríamos decir que esta reunión se está grabando y se publicará posteriormente en el sitio web del proyecto. Entonces, si tiene algún problema utilizando Zoom, por favor déjenos saber usando la función de Q&A o preguntas y respuestas.
Okay, and finally, please note that everyone joining the meeting is muted by default, and you may use the raise hand feature to talk and use the Q&A tool to submit any questions you have. After clicking the Q&A icon, type your message in the new box in the bottom right.
Se darán cuenta que todos están silenciados durante la presentación, pero si desean hablar, pueden utilizar la función de levantar la mano o usando Q&A, que es para escribir preguntas si prefieren no hablar en voz alta.
Okay, so now that you're all Zoom professionals, we can get into the presentation. So this is a two-part project. The first part is the Housing Element update for the 6th cycle, which covers the years 2021 to 2029. The Housing Element must be completed and submitted to the Housing and Community Development Department at the state, or HCD, by October 2021, but there is a 120-day grace period. The second part is the development of pro-housing policies and strategies. So pro-housing refers to things that the city can do to help incentivize the development of more attainably priced housing. So looking into financial opportunities, regulatory incentives, faster approval times, basically removing hurdles to housing development. This will follow completion of the Housing Element, so we'll have future opportunities to engage in this discussion at a later date.
Este es un proyecto de dos partes. La primera parte es la cual estamos discutiendo, hablando de hoy, es la actualización del elemento de vivienda para el 6º ciclo, que será vigente del año 2021, este año en octubre, hasta el octubre del 2029. El elemento se debe enviar a HCD o el Departamento de Desarrollo Comunitario antes del 15 de octubre de este año. La segunda parte del proyecto es el desarrollo de políticas y estrategias pro vivienda, lo cual se refiere a las cosas que la ciudad puede hacer para ayudar a incentivar el desarrollo de viviendas asequibles. Por ejemplo, buscar oportunidades para financiamiento o incentivos regulatorios. Esto comenzará a principios del 2000, bueno, a finales de este año, entonces hablaremos más del tema en ese momento.
Okay, so in 1969, the state of California started requiring housing elements to ensure every jurisdiction plans for their fair share of housing. The state requires that every housing element is updated every 8 years. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, the 6th cycle will cover the period from 2021 to 2029. The housing element serves as a policy guide to address the comprehensive housing needs of the city. And the primary focus is to help realize the production of affordable housing, which is desperately needed to reduce rents, improve access to jobs, strengthen the local economy and job market, and combat segregation. It's important to ensure decent, safe, and affordable housing for every resident, both current and future. It's also important to note that the housing element does not determine exactly where housing will be constructed, but it does identify sites that collectively can accommodate the city's housing need and sets priorities for meeting housing needs of the diverse population.
En 1969, el Estado de California comenzó a exigir que cada jurisdicción o ciudad completara un elemento de vivienda para garantizar que cada jurisdicción planificara su parte justa en el número de unidades o viviendas. Y se debe actualizar cada 8 años. El elemento de vivienda sirve como una guía para guiar las políticas, para abordar las necesidades de vivienda de la ciudad. El objetivo principal es garantizar una vivienda digna, segura y asequible para todos los residentes de la ciudad. Es importante notar que el elemento de vivienda no determina exactamente dónde se construirán las viviendas, es decir, que la ciudad no está diciendo que van a construir esas viviendas, sino que establece las políticas para satisfacer las necesidades y garantizar y crear una guía para cómo podemos realizar las viviendas.
Okay, so there are four main components to the housing element. First is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, which is the number of units that need to be built within the 8-year timeframe to house the current population and the projected population growth. RHNA is broken down by income categories, so each city is required to accommodate all economic groups. Second, a jurisdiction needs to show that they have enough sites to build the housing. This is called the adequate sites inventory. Each site must meet certain criteria in order to qualify. Third is the identification of constraints and barriers to the development of housing, and that can include regulatory constraints, environmental constraints, financial barriers, to name a few. And fourth, the city must also develop goals, policies, and implementation programs to address the housing needs.
Hay cuatro partes principales en el elemento de vivienda. El primero es la evaluación de las necesidades de viviendas regionales, o RHNA, lo cual es el número o la cantidad de unidades que deben construirse para acomodar a la población actual y proyectada para los próximos 8 años. Y cada ciudad debe de considerar las necesidades de vivienda para todos los grupos de ingresos. Una ciudad debe demostrar cómo tienen suficientes sitios para construir las viviendas. A esto se le llama el inventario adecuado de sitios. Para contar, el sitio debe cumplir con criterios. Y otro componente es la identificación de limitaciones y barreras para el desarrollo de viviendas, viendo cuáles barreras o limitaciones existen y cómo las podemos sobrepasar. Y cuarto, la ciudad debe de desarrollar metas, políticas y un programa de implementación para abordar las necesidades de viviendas.
Okay, so after the housing element is complete and approved by the decision makers, the city must submit it to HCD for approval. The housing element is either accepted or sent back for revisions. And after accepted, the city must report to the state annually on its progress toward meeting its RHNA. There are also certain penalties if cities fail to adopt housing elements that comply with state law. Due to the statewide housing crisis, the state has made enforcement stricter and passed a law in 2017 that allows the Attorney General to sue cities that fail to adopt approved housing elements. I think the biggest incentive is that if the state finds that a city is out of compliance, then cities lose some local control. If a city does not adopt a substantially compliant housing element on schedule, the pro-housing default rule gets triggered, where the city must approve almost any proposed development in which at least 20% of the units would be affordable to low-income households, regardless of whether the project complies with local zoning. So it opens the city up to lawsuits and court-mandated compliance, not to mention limited access to state funding, which doesn't help the city in implementing housing policy. So it's really in everyone's best interest to ensure that the city adopts a compliant housing element on time and maintains that compliance.
Entonces, tenemos 4 partes del elemento de vivienda. Una vez que el elemento esté completo y aprobado, la ciudad debe enviarlo a HCD, al Estado, para su revisión y aprobación. HCD lo revisa y lo acepta, y si no lo acepta, se los envía de vuelta con comentarios. Una vez que ya finalmente sea aceptado, la ciudad debe enviarlo un reporte anualmente demostrando su progreso para cumplir con el elemento. También existen ciertas sanciones si las ciudades no adoptan un elemento antes del 15 de octubre. Debido a la crisis de vivienda en todo el estado ha hecho que la aplicación sea más estricta, y en 2017 aprobaron una ley que permite que las ciudades puedan ser demandadas por el estado si no cumplen con la fecha de entrega. Entonces, por lo tanto, es muy importante que la ciudad y todos los de la comunidad trabajen juntos para que puedan aprobar el elemento y no corren el riesgo de ser demandados a la ciudad, y sin mencionar el acceso limitado a los fondos estatales. Entonces, lo mejor para todos es garantizar que la ciudad adopte a tiempo su elemento de vivienda para que cumpla con las normas y mantenga el cumplimiento y ayude a que tal vez en el futuro veamos más viviendas en la ciudad.
So now I'm going to talk briefly about the California housing crisis to shed some light on the local issue in Indio.
Ahora vamos a hablar brevemente sobre la crisis de la vivienda en California para darle contexto al problema local.
So we are indisputably in a statewide housing crisis. California has a shortage of nearly 3.5 million homes and has the highest poverty rate in the nation after accounting for housing costs. At least 30% of people in every major statistical area cannot afford local rents. That share is 60% in some areas.
Sin lugar a duda, estamos en una crisis de vivienda en todo el estado de California. California tiene un déficit de casi 3.5 millones de hogares y tiene la tasa de pobreza más alta de la nación después de tener en cuenta los costos de vivienda. Al menos el 30% de las personas en todo el área estadística, el estado, no puede pagar sus alquileres locales. Y este porcentaje es del 60% en algunas zonas.
So new homes have become a luxury item. New home closings are hovering right around 42,000 in California, far below the 20-year average of 62,000 units per year.
Así que las viviendas nuevas se han convertido en un artículo de lujo en California. Hubo aproximadamente 42,000 cierres de casas nuevas en 2017, mucho menos que el promedio de 20 años de 62,000 unidades por año.
So how did we get here? What is largely driving the cost of living and the undersupply of housing? This slide outlines the typical cost drivers associated with new home construction in California. The three major factors impacting the cost of living and undersupply are: one, direct costs, so that includes material costs and labor shortages. Number two, time and impact fees. So this includes things like the holding fees through the often lengthy city permitting process and development fees to fund the provision of city services specific to the building of new housing. So water fees, school fees, sewer connection, parks, storm drains, plan check and inspection, things like that. And lastly, number three, land costs. So the cost of raw land and then the physical improvements to it, like grading and other prep. There's a limited supply of land, and land prices are very much impacted by land use restrictions. So the fact that the majority of residential land in Indio is designated for single-family homes is driving up the cost of housing. And while our economy is growing, the demand for housing grows with it, increasing the cost of housing. So it's a supply and demand issue.
Bueno, entonces, ¿cómo fue que llegamos a este punto, ¿no? A donde faltan tantas unidades? Pues hay tres factores que estamos viendo. Son los costos directos, incluyendo costos de materiales y la falta de mano de obra. Y el segundo es tarifas de impacto y tiempo, por lo que esto incluye cosas como las tarifas para servicios de la ciudad, específicamente para la construcción de nuevas viviendas, como las tarifas de agua escolares o conexiones nuevas de agua y drenaje. Y por último, tercer factor son los costos de terrenos, es decir, el costo de una propiedad sin estructuras. Y bueno, hay una oferta limitada de terrenos y los precios se ven muy afectados por las restricciones y regulaciones de desarrollo por todas las ciudades. Entonces, el hecho que una mayoría de los terrenos en Indio estén designados para viviendas unifamiliares, esto es, en inglés se llaman single family homes, está aumentando el costo de las viviendas. Y mientras nuestra economía crece, la demanda de vivienda crece con ella porque más gente se viene a California y esto aumenta el costo de la vivienda. Por lo tanto, es un problema de oferta, mucha oferta y muy poca demanda. Perdón, al revés, muy poca oferta y mucha demanda.
So what are the implications? Well, many companies are relocating to where attainably priced homes are more available. So jobs are leaving the state. They're going to places like Texas, Tennessee, Arizona, Nevada, Utah. This image shows you which states give you the most bang for your buck. So not surprisingly, California and New York are the worst. In California, the cost of living implies that $100 only allows $89 of purchasing power. Additionally, California is underproducing housing relative to its population. California has built half of the housing units it has needed since 1980, and that is just to keep up with demand. So the shortage of housing drives prices up, which means people often have to crowd in one house to afford to live here, resulting in overcrowding. Currently, the ownership rate has declined to 54%. compared to 64% nationally, because building permit activity is well below the historic average. But that isn't all bad, as the data shows a steady pace of multifamily building, which is a source of more attainably priced housing. And lastly, only 35% of households are able to afford a new home, and this is trending down as prices continue to increase and supply is slow to expand.
Bueno, entonces, ¿cuáles son las implicaciones? Hay muchas empresas que se están trasladando o mudando a lugares donde hay viviendas más asequibles como Texas, Tennessee, Arizona, Nevada o Utah. Y este mapa que ven en la pantalla muestra los estados que dan el mejor rendimiento por su inversión. No es una sorpresa que California y Nueva York son los peores. En California el costo de vida implica que por cada $100 que tiene, eso solo rinde $89 de poder adquisitivo. Además, California está subproduciendo viviendas en relación a su población. California ha construido la mitad de las unidades de vivienda que ha necesitado desde 1980, y eso es solo para satisfacer la demanda. Entonces, la falta de vivienda sube los precios, lo cual significa que más gente tiene que vivir en una casa junta para poder pagar la renta, como varias familias o varias generaciones, resultando en su superpoblación, lo cual en inglés se llama overcrowding. Y actualmente la tasa de propiedad ha disminuido al 54% en comparación con el 64% a nivel nacional. Pero esto no es del todo mal, ya que los datos muestran un ritmo constante de construcción multifamiliar, es decir, como departamentos, lo cual proporcionan viviendas a precios más asequibles que a comparación a comprar una casa. Y por último, solo el 35% de los hogares pueden alcanzar a comprar una casa nueva. Y este porcentaje sigue bajando debido a que precios continúan aumentando y hay más demanda que oferta.
So some recent state legislation has helped tackle this problem by requiring cities to increase approval times for housing, allow increases in density for affordable housing, allow accessory dwelling units or granny flats without having to provide additional parking and other flexible standards. So that's just some of the things that the state has required. And that's a start, and now it's the city's role to go further to help meet local housing needs and facilitate housing production commensurate with its specific needs.
Algunas leyes estatales recientes tienen como objetivo ayudar este problema del crisis de vivienda al exigir que las ciudades deben expedir los tiempos de aprobación de viviendas cuando los desarrolladores aplican, o aumentando los bonos de densidad para viviendas asequibles específicamente, o permitiendo unidades de viviendas accesorias o apartamentos tipo, en inglés se llaman granny flats, sin tener que proporcionar estacionamiento adicional u otros estándares flexibles. Así que eso es un comienzo y ahora le toca a la ciudad ir más allá para ayudar a satisfacer las necesidades de viviendas de toda la comunidad.
Okay, I'm just going to go over some local statistics now. Indio has a 2020 total population of 90,751 residents and an annual growth rate of 3.1%, which is over quadruple the rate of growth in the region, to add perspective. 7.7% of households are experiencing poverty, similar to that of the region. Compared to the region as a whole, Indio has more seniors and more youth, but less female-headed households with children. The reason I mention these is that it's important to guide future development to offer a range of housing choices to meet all types of housing needs for a diverse population.
La población total de Indio es de 90,700 personas y tiene una tasa de crecimiento anual de 3%. Para darles perspectiva, eso es más de 4 veces la tasa de crecimiento en la región. Entonces, sí, aunque sea 3%, es bastante grande. Y el 7.7% de los hogares viven en pobreza, similar a la de la región. En comparación a la región, Indio tiene más personas mayores y más jóvenes. La razón por que mencionamos esto es que es importante orientar el desarrollo futuro para ofrecer una variedad de opciones de vivienda para satisfacer las necesidades de vivienda para una población diversa.
Now let's take a look at housing in Indio. There are 32,539 housing units. 72% of which are designated single family or are built as single family. Nearly 70% are owner occupied, which makes sense when over 70% are single family. So though we often associate high ownership rates as neighborhood stability, there are many indicators that low density single family are not meeting the housing need. For example, one indicator is overcrowding, where families have to double up because they can't afford a home. 10% of Indio's housing stock is overcrowded. Vacancy rates. Indio has a high vacancy rate of nearly 17%, which suggests that your housing supply is not matched with the demand. Another indicator is cost burden. Housing cost burden is when households spend more than 30% of their income on housing. 44% of total households in India are cost burdened, and nearly 57% of renters are cost burdened. And you ask why? Well, look at your supply of rental housing. You don't have a lot of it compared to your single family detached supply. So less supply of rental housing means more demand, which means overpriced housing, which means high vacancy rates and cost burdened households.
Ahora veamos los datos de vivienda en Indio. Hay alrededor de 32,000 unidades de vivienda, el 72% de las cuales se designan single family o unifamiliar. Casi el 70% están ocupadas por sus propietarios en vez de inquilinos. Y aunque normalmente asociamos las altas tasas de propiedad con la estabilidad de vecindario, hay muchos indicadores de que las casas unifamiliares de baja densidad no satisfacen las necesidades de vivienda. Por ejemplo, un indicador es el número de personas que viven en una casa, lo cual les comenté antes que es la sobrepoblación, donde las familias tienen que duplicarse porque no pueden pagar una casa. El 10% de las viviendas de Indio están superpobladas. Otro indicador son las tasas de disponibilidad. Indio tiene una tasa de disponibilidad alta, de casi el 17%, lo que sugiere que su oferta de vivienda no se corresponde con la demanda. Otro indicador es la carga de costos. La carga de costos de la vivienda ocurre cuando los hogares gastan más del 30% de sus ingresos en vivienda. El 44% de los hogares en Indio pagan más del 30%. Y casi el 57% de los inquilinos están sobrecargados o pagan más del 30%. Indio no ofrece muchas opciones para viviendas multifamiliares como apartamentos a comparación a las casas unifamiliares. Por lo tanto, menos oferta de viviendas de alquilar significa más demanda, lo que significa viviendas sobrevaloradas y hogares abogueados por los costos.
In Indio, your prevalent occupations are service and management, and prevalent industries are in education and social services, followed by art, entertainment, and recreation. And this is important to look at because it can give you information on what salary ranges are like for a lot of residents in your city, and therefore what housing they are able to afford.
En Indio, sus ocupaciones en servicio y administración predominan, y las industrias predominantes que siguen son las de educación y los servicios sociales, seguidos por el arte, entretenimiento y la recreación. Es importante ver estos datos porque pueden brindar información sobre los salarios medios o promedios para muchos residentes de la ciudad.
Which leads to this slide. So who can afford housing in Indio? This looks at the minimum annual income required to buy a home in Indio to not be considered cost burden by the state. And as I mentioned, the state defines cost burden as anyone who is spending more than 30% of their gross income on housing. So the median price of a home in Indio is $350,000. Today's interest rate for those with pretty good credit is just under 3% annual percentage rate, or APR. So let's say you have pretty good credit and you're able to pay 20% in a down payment, which is what you need to pay in order to avoid paying property mortgage insurance or PMI. You apply for a 30-year loan, and all things factored in, including your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your monthly payment is approximately $1,602. You multiply that by 12 months, and divide by 30%, and that's how much you need to make in a year to not be considered cost burden. So $64,080. A lot of folks can't afford 20% down payment. Maybe you can afford 5%. So now they have to pay PMI, and have a bigger monthly mortgage. So now you're looking at an annual salary of $83,440 just to afford the median home in Indio, the median priced home.
Entonces, ¿quién puede pagar una vivienda en Indio? Este gráfico que ven en la pantalla analiza el ingreso anual mínimo requerido para comprar una casa en Indio, para que no se considere sobrecargados de costo. Es decir, como les dije antes, que no están pagando más del 30% de sus ingresos. Según las tasas de interés actuales, que por cierto son bajas, digamos que uno tiene la suerte de poder poner el 20% de anticipo, como ven en del lado izquierdo. Su ingreso mínimo para que no se considere cargado de costos tiene que ser de $64,080 anuales. Supongamos que solo puede pagar, o sea, hacer un pago inicial del 5%. Bueno, ahora necesita ganar $83,000 al año. Si no, no van a poder hacer el pago mensual de $2,086.
So many types of households struggle with housing costs. In Indio, the area median income is $53,669. But if you need to be making a minimum of $64,000, as shown in the previous slide, to afford a median priced home in Indio, only those in the moderate income and above moderate income groups can currently afford to buy a home in Indio and not be considered cost burdened. And it's the goal of the housing element to help meet the needs of all income groups, not just the moderate and above moderate groups, and help everyone get into a home and be able to afford it and not have to suffer overcrowding in order to make ends meet. So this gives the city an idea of where to focus your housing production, which is in the lower income categories.
Entonces, si ven en la pantalla, el ingreso medio de su ciudad es de $53,669. Entonces, $53,000 es el ingreso medio, pero $64,000 es el ingreso mínimo necesario para pagar una casa con el 20% de anticipo. Entonces, uno puede ver que solo puede alcanzar a comprar una casa si se encuentra dentro de las categorías de ingresos moderados o sobremoderado, por lo que ven en las dos cajas en la parte inferior de la pantalla.
So this slide shows you the city's 6-cycle RHNA. The city needs to set aside sites to meet a total of 7,793 units, which is a 150% increase from the previous housing cycle, the one that we're in now, the 5th cycle. The Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, further breaks this number down by income category. So 45% of the housing units can be in the above moderate group. These are essentially your single family market rate homes. That's 3,527 above moderate that you see on the far right of this screen. The remaining 55% are allocated to those of moderate income or lower income. And so far in the current 5th cycle housing, or in the current 5th housing cycle that we're in, only 45% of total required units, so 1,361 have been built. And most of them, 94% or 1,279 are in the above moderate category and all single family. So the housing being built now based on current trends is not meeting the needs of your moderate and below moderate income residents.
Este gráfico le muestra el RHNA del 6º ciclo de la ciudad. Debe reservar sitios para cumplir con un total de 7,793 unidades, lo cual es un aumento del 150% con respecto al ciclo anterior. Y hasta ahora, solo el 45% de las unidades se han cumplido para este ciclo. Y la mayoría de ellas, el 94%, han sido para familias con un ingreso medio o más que moderado. Por lo tanto, la vivienda que se está construyendo, según nuestra investigación, hasta ahora no satisface las necesidades de sus residentes con un ingreso menos del moderado.
This slide shows you how many low-income and very low-income units the city needs and can currently accommodate based on current zoning. So I'm focusing on these sites, the lower-income sites, because the city must meet certain zoning restrictions in order for them to count towards meeting the city's RHNA. So the sites have to allow for 30 units per acre. So the state recommends building in a buffer and identifying 25% more units than needed, just in case some sites identified aren't actually built for lower income groups. With this buffer factored in, the city should have approximately 3,700 units. The city just adopted their general plan update and is in the process of updating its zoning code to be consistent. Without the zoning code update, the city could only accommodate 3,080 units based on current zoning. So the city is short by approximately 620 units. However, once the zoning is updated, the city would be able to accommodate approximately 5,900 units in the lower income categories. This is just a preliminary analysis, and these numbers aren't set in stone, but it's a good gauge for where the city is at now.
La ciudad necesita acomodar aproximadamente 3.700 unidades de bajo ingreso y muy bajos ingresos, teniendo en cuenta un buffer requerido del Estado del 25%. Y actualmente la ciudad puede acomodar 3.080 unidades en sitios vacantes en zonas designadas para desarrollo residencial. Y en el mapa que ven en la pantalla, nos estamos fijando en esas 3 zonas porque esas 3 zonas cumplen con los requerimientos del Estado para la densidad requerida para a donde pueden asignar desarrollo para viviendas asequibles. Y la ciudad podría acomodar 5.900 unidades si la zonificación coincidiera con el plan general y permitiera el uso residencial en estos 3 sitios, lo cual es probable porque ahorita la ciudad de Indio tiene otro proyecto a donde están actualizando su zoning o sus zonas.
Okay. So these are 5 challenges that we've identified. 1, a shortage of sites. As I just mentioned, Indio currently has a shortage of sites to meet the RHNA based on current zoning. Number 2, there's a significant lack of housing diversity reflected in the percentage of land occupied by single family. Third, the current housing stock is not meeting the needs of a large segment of the population that fall within the very low or the low income and very low income groups. Fourth, current housing trends are not providing for the below moderate income population, evident by the fact that 94% of the units built in the 5th cycle are single family. And finally, the current housing production volumes are substantially below what is needed for the 6th cycle RHNA. For example, in 2020, 409 new single family permits were issued, plus another 100 multifamily units compared to the 1,000 plus units needed annually to accommodate the housing needs in the 6th cycle.
Y bueno, ahí son los retos, ¿no? Aquí tenemos los 5 retos que hemos identificado. El primero son falta de sitios. Actualmente Indio tiene una falta de sitios para cumplir con su RHNA según la zonificación actual, pero como les comenté, no es un gran problema ya que está en el proceso de actualizar sus zonas en este momento. Y el segundo es la falta de diversidad en viviendas, reflejado en el porcentaje de terrenos ocupados por viviendas unifamiliares y la falta de terrenos para apartamentos o multifamiliares. Y el parque de viviendas actuales de vivienda no están cubriendo la población de ingresos por la gente que está ganando menos el ingreso moderado. Y finalmente, los volúmenes de producción de vivienda promedio anual actual están muy bajos, por debajo de lo que se necesitaría para cumplir con el RHNA de este ciclo. Por ejemplo, en 2020 se emitieron alrededor de 400 permisos y 100 para unidades de multifamiliares, frente a más de 1,000 unidades necesarias actualmente para satisfacer las necesidades de vivienda en este ciclo.
Okay, so the city is committed to tackling these issues that I've just mentioned, but in this housing element cycle, but now we want to hear from you and what your needs and priorities are. So we're going to take a break to take a housing survey to understand what your interest in housing is and what your needs and priorities are. I'll walk you through a series of polling questions. So you'll see some questions pop up. Don't close out of that screen. I'll read the question and give you a moment to answer. And this is totally anonymous. some questions were too long to translate, so Erica will translate those after I read them. So I'm going to close out of my screen, or actually I can pull up the questions from here. Okay, so poll one, the first question. Can you see this, Erica? Has this popped up on your screen, or do I need to share a different screen? Can you see the question?
I don't believe so.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Hold on. And then share screen. Let's see. Hold on. Is that coming up? Matt, we might have be having some trouble seeing the polling questions on.
So if you're ready to launch the poll, go ahead and when you select poll, Shannon, go ahead and select relaunch poll.
Okay. Continue. Okay.
We're good.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Perfect. Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, so the first question. What is your interest in housing in Indio? Check all that apply. So I am a current resident. I'm a local developer. I own a business in Indio. I own property in Indio. I work in Indio. I wish to become a resident in Indio or other. So if you can click on the item that most represents your interest in housing, we'll be able to see the
Shannon, this is Leila. I got somebody, Marlene Balchan, if I'm not pronouncing the name incorrect. She says don't see anything to click.
Oh, I don't see anything to click on my end, Matt, either. Do you know how to? Oh, somebody did click. I see one of one.
Yeah, Marilyn, there should be a screen that popped up for you that says polls. So if you have your screen, perhaps try clicking on the Zoom icon at the bottom of your computer screen to see if there's another, it's on an extra window, if that helps.
We've had one person, okay, 2 people, 4, okay, so people are getting it. Have some local developers.
This is Matt IT here. Only attendees can actually vote on it.
Right.
Oh, thanks, Vanessa. So this might help people. Vanessa says, I had to click on top poll in progress for it to pop up. And just so everyone knows, we'll also make this available on the city's website starting on the 24th of this month. So, you know, if you're on your phone right now or you're driving the kids or anything and you can't vote, you can always come back next week to the city's website and vote there.
Yeah, we're getting some people voting in. I'll give it a few minutes. Or I guess I could just wait till see all 30. How about I give it 3 minutes and 4 minutes for this first one, since we've had some technical issues, and then moving forward, I'll give it a minute so we can get through all of the questions. So we have a lot of current residents. We have local developers, people that own businesses, that own property, that work in Indio. So we have a good cross section of people with us tonight, which is great.
And I do want to mention these last 3 questions I was not able to fit the Spanish translation. So you may want to, when we get to the second part of the poll, then you may want to translate the last 3 questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Looks like half have been able to answer the question so far. All right, so I'm going to move on. I don't see anybody doing anything right now to the second question. How long have you lived in India? Oh, it looks like people are answering all of these questions. Good. They're just moving through them. Okay. The second one was, how long have you lived in India? The third is, what is your age range? The fourth is, how would you rate the physical condition of the home you live in? So excellent, shows signs of minor deferred maintenance, needs 1 or more modest rehabilitation improvements, needs 1 or more major upgrades, or other. We'll open this up for discussion at the end of this presentation, so you can discuss any of these items or other questions that you may have as towards the end of the presentation. Fifth question, why have you chosen to live in Indio? So close to work, close to family and friends, quality of housing, local recreation and amenities and scenery, affordability. So a lot of people, half and half on close to family and friends, and another 50% affordability, quality of local schools, safety of the neighborhoods, city services and programs. The sixth question, do you own or rent your home? So it's about half and half, 40% own, 55% rent. You have some other folks that live with other household members. Nobody homeless is attending tonight. Number 7, if you wish to own a home in Indio but do not, what issues are preventing you at this time? Mark all that apply. So the majority of folks cannot find a home within their target price range. Others do not qualify for a loan, do not currently have the financial resources for an appropriate down payment, and currently do not have the financial resources for an adequate monthly mortgage payment. And then one person cannot currently find a home that suits their quality standards. And then I'm interested, let's see, I can't really see this, but it looks like there's other situations that were not identified here. Number 8, if you wish to rent a home in Indio but do not, what issues are preventing you at this time? Mark all that apply. So number 1, I cannot find a home within my target price range.
No, I am on. Don't.
Oh. Number 2, I cannot find a home that suits my needs. So the quarter of the folks cannot find a home within their targeted price range. Some currently do not have the financial resources for an appropriate deposit on a rental. And others currently do not have the financial resources for an adequate monthly rent. One person cannot currently find a home that suits their quality standards. Matt, are you seeing the other? I can't see, it says 14 out of 22 have other, but I can't see can't see the bar.
Unfortunately,
So.
with other, I was not able to add a description box.
Okay, but they still can select that, right? So 64% selected other?
Yes, they definitely should be able to select that option.
Okay. I'd like to pause here actually and ask if anybody, any attendee wants to chime in and ask a question or post what other situation you're facing, because 64% said there's another reason for why you wish to rent a home in Indio but are not. So I'd love to hear from you. And same with owning, 45% said there's another reason that not listed here for why you wish to own a home, but do not. So if, I can't see the Q&A, Erica, but if you see any comments come in, I'd love to hear what some of the other concerns and issues are around renting and owning in Indio.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to reply, you're welcome to reply via, you can actually hit the raise hand and we can unmute you if you have a long answer, or you are welcome to reply via the chat. And we got a question about if those who are responding to the poll this evening will be encouraged to take the survey after it's posted on the website. You're welcome to do so if you have more to share with us. We also will provide an email that, you know, if you're more comfortable sharing anything that way. And I think we have one hand raised. Let's see. So we have Priscilla who'd like to chat. Are you able to unmute her? I don't know if I am, Shannon.
Let me see.
Okay.
Participants.
And in the meantime,
Priscilla? Yeah, I can unmute Priscilla. Actually, let's see. Allow to talk. Yep. Go ahead, Priscilla. You should be able to talk now.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to chime in, and thank you for asking. As far as answering other on that question, wanted to add to, the high price range, and wanted to add one sort of observation in terms of house prices and when homeowners decide to put their homes on the market or what have you. There's this culture of needing to and wanting to get the biggest bang for their buck. So there's this culture of selling to the highest bidders, which is, I think, something that the city can do to, there's something the city can do to incentivize homeowners in a way that would allow then residents and natives of this area, the service community, those employed in the service industries or what have you, would allow better opportunities for accessing a home when they're not necessarily being sold to developers, investors, and non-residents. People want to live next to neighbors, not year-round party goers and short-term rental vacationers. So yeah, that was my other.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
We've definitely seen this in other cities as well. So we will take note of that.
Appreciate it. Now, I just mute myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to share their thoughts? Well, please raise your hand if you have anything to share. We'll go through the rest of these questions, and then I'll do some next steps and then open it up for Q&A. So there's only 30 of us here tonight, so feel free to talk openly. It's a small group. So the 10th question is, which best describes your household type? Living alone, couple. There are 3 people that are couples with no children. Another 8 are couples with children in the home. 5 are single parents with children. 2 are multi-generational, so 3 or more generations in the same home. Another 3 are non-family with roommates. So this is great. I feel like we're getting a lot of people with all different types of housing here tonight. So we'd love to hear from you. And then Matt, that's all I see as far as the polling. That there's 10. Was that it, or did you say there was more?
If you end this poll and then you go ahead and end the poll, we'll start the second. I'll start the second poll here. So we'll go ahead and
okay.
Yeah, and there were a few comments, Shannon. I'm going to read them in English and then I'll read them in Spanish. And so just like, no, hay unos comentarios que en el chat, los voy a leer en inglés y luego se los leo en español. And so I think I saw some, just about the other, someone mentioned that they were born and raised in India and that's why they chosen to live there. And then in terms of buying homes, it looks like some people, they don't want to buy homes that are not HOA or gated. And it looks like all that is being built are types of homes in 92203, so the area code, and that they don't see affordable homes in 92201. off the top of my head, I don't know, can't locate those zip codes, but I'm sure everyone on this call knows off the top of their head where those are. And I think Kevin from the city can speak to that.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. It's a good point. Traditionally, a lot of the home building in the city has been single family. It's been in gated communities with homeowners associations. I'm going to stop there for a second so you can follow up, Erica.
Ok, sí, hay alguien que comentó que hay gente que quiere comprar casas que no tienen un HOA, Homeowners Association, o que no tienen, que no están ubicadas en privadas, pero esta participante ve que las casas que están construyendo ahorita solo son de ese tipo, que están ubicadas en privadas o que tienen un HOA. Y ahorita Kevin va a hablar del tema.
We're trying to change that. In September of 2019, our city council approved what we call a general plan. It's our 20-year plan for the city. And in that plan, we are now discouraging gated communities, and we're also pushing for more density and more diverse housing types. So the plan is kind of a new blueprint for us that we're going to try to break from those traditional development patterns. But it's going to take a little bit of time.
Kevin mencionó que la ciudad está tratando de romper ese estigma y esos desarrollos, pero pues va a tomar un poco de tiempo, pero que sí lo están tomando en cuenta y sí están haciendo lo que pueden hacer para cambiar las políticas.
Okay, so now I'm going to launch the next polling. This is just a few questions. Actually, let me see. There's another 8 questions. So feel free to scroll at your own pace. The first is, what type of housing is most needed in Indio? So single family, duplex, attached homes, condominiums, apartments, or senior housing, accessory dwelling units like granny flats, housing for people with disabilities. Can you see the poll up, or do I need to relaunch it?
Yes.
Matt, are you able to? Okay, you can see it. Okay. I think you can only select one. Can you select more than one option on this? I don't see the selection button, but I'm not seeing anybody voting yet, so can somebody chat in if you're having any issues with the poll? Let's see.
Looks like it's good. They're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's all 8 questions, so.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I think we can give them like 3-4 minutes. And again, if you feel rushed or anything, that's not the intention. We're going to have a full poll available for you online. And if you wanted to go back and have more time to do it, we welcome you to do so next week. Y les vamos a dar como 3-4 minutos para llenar la encuesta, pero la intención no es de presionarlos con el tiempo, pero viendo que ya casi son las 7:30, queremos respetar su tiempo también. Entonces, pero si sienten que no tienen suficiente tiempo para llenarla ahorita, los invitamos a participar en la encuesta la próxima semana. La pueden tomar a su propio paso.
And for those that are just listening in and not able to vote, I'll just read off the questions so you at least know what we're asking, and then you can get into the website and answer those at a later time. So number 2 is, how many bedrooms do you have in your place of residence? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or more than 5 or more. Number 3, how many people live in your household? So 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, or more than 5. Do you consider your living situation to be too crowded? Yes or no, or not sure? What do you believe are the most current housing concerns in Indio? So housing affordability, housing availability, homelessness, proximity to services, resources, or high-paying jobs, housing, let's see, home ownership, overcrowding, gentrification, housing quality, or other. Okay. Number 6, what do you believe is the biggest challenge for addressing the living and housing needs of lower income seniors? So lack of payment assistance, lack of senior housing where services are within walking distance, lack of affordable senior housing, lack of retrofitting assistance to make homes more livable. About 80%, 82%, 83%. A lot of people are saying the lack of affordable senior housing. Number 7, sometimes changes to living conditions sometimes changes in living conditions or a neighborhood may threaten to displace people from their home. This is also called gentrification. Which do you believe are the most pressing displacement concerns? So sometimes changes to living conditions or, oh, sorry, that was we kind of increased. I guess we duplicated that. So sudden rent increase, sudden lease termination, eviction, maintenance issues that are not fixed, long-term residents can't stay in community, neighborhood businesses closing. So a lot of this, a lot of the displacement concerns revolve around the sudden rent increase, 89%, followed by maintenance issues not being fixed. And then the last question here, let's see, actually, Erica, for those that speak Spanish, could you please translate number 6, 7, and 8, the questions, because we don't have a translation.
Yeah. Y para los que hablan español, las preguntas no las pudimos traducir porque no había espacio, pero número 6 es, queremos saber qué creen que es el más grande reto para tener casas como asequibles o casas para la gente que se considera senior, que es de 65 para arriba. Y número 7, les estamos preguntando que a veces hay cambios de condiciones de vivienda o un barrio se siente medio desplazado de sus casas y queremos saber qué creen ustedes que sea el reto más grande de desplazo. Y número 8 es que la ciudad de Indio requiere planear para 7,793 unidades adicionales de casas y queremos saber cuáles creen ustedes que sean las mejores estrategias para que se haga realidad la planeación. Y como les mencioné, vamos a poner la encuesta en la página web de la ciudad y nos aseguraremos que todo esté en español.
All right, I'm going to end the poll and then actually, yeah, it looks like everybody's winding down. I'm not seeing any other responses coming in. So I'm going to end the poll. Thank you so much for doing that. I think that really helps us target priorities and help us prioritize the housing element and the policies and the actions that we propose. So this is really helpful. Okay. All right, can you now see my screen? The community priorities, is that up? If I go to the next slide. Okay. So before we open the meeting up to a Q&A and a more open dialogue for those interested in chiming in and expressing or asking any questions or saying more, I'll go through the next steps for the project. So currently we're working on a housing needs assessment, which gets into the details of what housing is exactly needed in Indio based on demographic and housing data. This will go through next month. We'll be conducting stakeholder interviews in a couple of weeks. So this will be discussions with developers and agencies, utility companies, HOA, board management, city council members, the whole group of people in Indio, followed by another public meeting in April, so to talk about policy. We will then be finalizing a draft of the housing element end of May, and then present it to the city council and commission, and also the public later on in the summer, so June, July. And then we anticipate holding public hearings in September through December.
Shannon, there's just one minor error. Public meeting number 2 is actually April 22nd, not April 21st.
Oh, okay, thank you. And that'll be on the website as well. So all 3 meetings are available on the website. Erica, can you translate this slide as well?
Yeah, so los próximos pasos van a ser en preparar el análisis de viviendas, y esto ya lo estamos haciendo, y vamos a tener el primer rendimiento en marzo, y luego vamos a tener entrevistas con interesados de la comunidad, empezando en marzo también. Y para todos los que están con nosotros en esta junta, vamos a tener otra junta pública a la cual todos están invitados en 21 de abril. Luego vamos a preparar el borrador del elemento de vivienda, y eso lo vamos a acabar a finales de mayo, lo cual vamos a presentar con el Council y el Commission de la ciudad en junio, y a principios de julio los invitamos nuevamente a revisar el plan, y vamos a poner información. Va a ser otra junta a través de Facebook y de Zoom. Y luego tendremos los public hearings, los cuales serán con el Planning Commission y City Council para aceptar los planes antes de mandárselos al Estado.
Okay, so now I'm just going to open it up for a little bit of time here. It's 7:37, so it's been a little over an hour. I don't want to hold you for too long. I know you guys have busy lives, and I just appreciate you being here tonight. But if there are any questions or any comments, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak, or send in your comments through the Q&A. And I'll keep this open for a couple minutes. Let's see. Oh, so there is a comment, Erica, in Spanish, you gave the incorrect date of the second workshop, which is April 22nd. El 22 de abril. Did I say that right? No. Erica, can you say that correctly? April 22nd for the workshop. No, she heard me. Let's see. So, okay, let's see, we have some questions. Okay.
Oh, I am so sorry. I've been muted. Wow.
No
Okay, it's getting late. I'm sorry, everyone. Perdón. No me di cuenta que no tenía el volumen prendido. Vanessa comentó que la junta, les di la fecha equivocada, va a ser el 22 de abril, lo cual vamos a tener pondremos en la página web para que no se confunden. And I just said in Spanish, but we'll put the right dates. We'll make sure the right dates are on the web page, so there's no confusion. Thanks for pointing that out.
And then Priscilla, you asked, will the public be invited to the meeting with the stakeholders? That is a stakeholder-focused meeting, so it's similar to this meeting, only with a smaller group of people. So it's the same meeting. We'll also be sharing the survey, and then we'll be having more kind of one-on-one dialogue with some leaders of the community. So if you are interested in attending, we're by no means excluding anybody. So you can we would be happy to invite you to that if you're interested. It's just going to be very similar to the presentation you're hearing tonight. What Marilyn asked, what communication occurs between the cities? So there is a lot of, dialogue between cities in the valley to talk about common issues that the cities are facing and common strategies for approaching those issues. And every city in the region is working together on this housing issue, every city in the state. So we do a lot of talking with other cities. We have a lot of other housing elements that we work on. So we are, taking best practices and policy and program recommendations. So there is a lot of communication and a lot of sharing of best practices in tackling this housing crisis. Kevin, did you want to say anything more to that as far as
the only thing I would
that's
add?
occurring?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that on a monthly basis, I or other staff are in meetings with other cities, informal and formal meetings where we're talking about housing issues. Our city, along with the city of Coachella, has a large number of housings we're planning for, but all the Valley cities are planning for housing as well. And it's a very important topic, and we're regularly trying to strategize on ways we can work together to help deliver the needed housing to the Valley as well as to our individual cities.
Okay. Let's see. We did not hear the date in Spanish. Sorry about that. Erica was muted. Did you say that in Spanish, Erica?
Yeah, I rectified
Okay.
everything. And I believe
Okay.
we have one person with their hand up, Eric. I'm sorry if I say wrong, Lemus or Lemus, if you want to unmute him.
Yeah, let me go to the participants, attendees. Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Eric Lemus, resident of Indio. In your last poll that you had that you just brought up, so I don't have the question in front of me, but I believe it had something to refer to types of housing, and it was like a family mix, family single homes, right? But I think in your reference, I think it should refine a little bit more what type of zoning. Since we will be asking or asking the general public, right? It's in concurring to the type of housing that they want, but it has to do with the zoning. And one possible option, I think, that in regards to zoning that I didn't see as an option in that first question, this last poll, is a multi-use a sort of zoning. That would include, essentially ADUs and then like a small business, kind of multi-zoning infrastructure.
Do you mean like a mixed use zoning that allows for residential and businesses? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think that could be an option, yeah. But I think because your question in the last poll is so direct to just housing, it doesn't really have as an option. I think, it could potentially be
like a live work.
Yeah, exactly.
If I could
okay, thank you.
Shannon, if I
could go ahead, Kevin.
We actually,
Sure.
So when we adopted our general plan, to Eric's point, we did think ahead a little bit to allowing that. It's right now, it's really kind of focused more on the denser plant areas that are planned to be denser. So for example, along Highway 111 or our downtown. So the kind of the live work option is there. The accessory dwelling units or junior accessory dwelling units are allowed by state law pretty much anywhere in our city for dwelling purposes. But Eric raises a good point, in the multi-use housing or the multi-market housing where you have different folks with different income. Those are things that we'll be looking at. We are also working on an update to our zoning code, and we are looking at how to bring those forward in the zoning, to Eric's point, so that we have zoning that offers more diverse housing product type.
So then in the future, I guess, yeah, I just include something about pertains to zoning. So it's not just particularly to like, housing or a particular type of housing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, we'll add that in. Thank you. Okay.
Shannon and Kevin, I have some questions here that it was through the chat. So if you tell me when is the appropriate time to read it to you guys for the response.
Go ahead. You can.
So there's
do
a
that now.
question that says on your presentation you have breakdown of the types of housing project there have been and where there is a gap. Then what is the breakdown of home ownership for very low income and low income within the area of median income? So that's one question. I can stop and you guys want to respond to
Let me
it.
take a stab at that, and others can. So in terms of where the housing has occurred, particularly over the last 5 years, a lot of it's been in north of the Interstate 10 and in the southern parts of our city. Less housing production has occurred, honestly, in the more central areas of our city and the more historic or older areas of our city, although we have passed some plans in the last few years that we hope will create more housing in those areas, and that may be in the form of more diverse multifamily housing or more diverse single family housing. The home ownership among the different income groups is information we're compiling as part of this effort. The U.S. Census Bureau has a lot of that information, and if you did your 2020 census, you helped answer some of those questions. And so we'll be gathering information from there as well as other entities, and then we'll be reporting that out once that information is all available. But I don't know if any others want to add to what I just said.
I just concur with you and what you said. As you said, the most of the focus on housing was single family on the north and the south, and nothing in the center. For example, nothing in the downtown Indio till last year, and also nothing in the Highway 111 in the area that we can create multifamily. So, and some of the reasons were basically the limitation that was provided through land use and through density, which with the new general plan, we're trying to go away from it and allow more density that can easily pencil out for the developers, and also smaller units that can be, because there are smaller units and smaller lots, that could be easily affordable, beside having the a classic affordable housing, which it could be subsidized by state or federal government. Then there's another question that it basically talks about, it's not a question, I guess, and a statement that talks about being everything will be, it is expensive, so I'm looking into a house for my brother to live in India. He has got a home in Blythe, but now he had to move and can't find a house in his price. How homes in India have went up in the past 2 years. And then also there is another one that says the rent is too high, about $900 per month, high prices in rent. And there's another, there's a question that says, with the rezoning in the area, is that going to help with the single family homes to convert into a duplex?
So let me take a stab at some of these, and Layla, yourself or others can weigh in. We understand the housing prices have gone up. That's something that we've observed, and part of addressing that is, the city is trying to work to provide vehicles. For example, we were part of a group of cities that joined with the county to go after a state grant, and we just got notification that the county got that grant, and as part of that grant, they'll be offering first-time homebuyer assistance grants to individuals. the county will also be helping to fund affordable housing development in the city of Indio. So there are some limited ways that we can help with that, and that's one of them. Part of the reason why some of the rents are so high in the city, and Shannon referred to it earlier, is because we don't have a big supply of alternative housing, particularly multifamily housing. And the more supply you have, the less those prices are going to be as significant, because there's more competition, if you will. So part of our goal with this housing element update, and part of our goal with these plans that we've been adopting in our last couple of years, is to increase more housing in our city, particularly more diverse housing. Layla, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I said.
No, I'm okay with what you said. Your right answer.
But I'll add that, you know, the general plan update did diversify the single family residential designations in the city. So there is the residential estates, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, that is exclusively single family, but other single family residential land use designations are now kind of opening up to, like you said, maybe duplex and other varieties. Kevin, can you weigh in on that, since you just went through that process? But
right, so our general plan that Shannon referred to, we are looking to increase the diversity of housing product. I said earlier, the cities had for a long time had a very traditional housing development pattern: low density, low intensity, single family homes, often behind gated communities, that we know only serve a certain portion of the housing need in our city. So the general plan it was a kind of I call it a pivot. We're really pivoting away from that development pattern. It can still happen, but we're really trying to increase the diversity of housing type. And so whether it's more duplexes or more multifamily housing or smaller houses with more opportunities for having households being able to occupy single family homes, but not necessarily the large lot that you've seen in the past. So we are really going down that route. And also recently we did what we call a study session with our city council and our planning commission, and we had a really good discussion with them, and we asked them questions about, what do you think about making housing more diverse in our city? And we threw out ideas like, what if we didn't have single family only zoning in our city anymore, as City of Sacramento has recently done? Or what if we made it increase the density? For example, right now under the zoning that we're working to update, you can only do 15 dwelling units to the acre, but our general plan says some places you should be able to do 40 and 60. Well, what if it was even more than that? So these are the kind of questions we're having right now with the community, yourselves, along with our council members and our planning commission members. And the housing element's going to come up with strategies for the city to pursue to hopefully make housing more diverse and have more options for folks.
Yeah, so Joy, you're absolutely right. We are envisioning a more economically integrated community, so allowing more economic diversity throughout the different zones. So the city is in the process of updating the zoning code right now to be consistent with the general plan update, and then also this process will inform the zoning code update as well. So it's a work in progress.
And then
no, go ahead.
Oh, and there's another question there's another question that the person asked: do we know how many homes in India are sitting empty, and were bought as a second home or for short-term rentals?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure we have that data at hand. Anecdotally, we understand that notwithstanding the current pandemic-related situation, we have upwards of 14,000 seasonal residents in our city typically. Now, obviously, with the pandemic and the resultant travel impacts, we don't know if that number is going to be as high this year. But if we have roughly 14,000 individuals coming into our city seasonally, we anticipate that a reasonable percentage of them are occupying second homes or other alternative living means. But I don't know that we have those statistics to handle, and I'm perhaps turn it over to Shannon or Erica if they could answer how we might pull that information from where. I'm not sure exactly.
I'm not
Erica, could you
a data source for that either. We do know, the vacancy rate is 17% in the city, which is much higher. I think a healthy vacancy rate is about 6%. So that's more than double. So it doesn't break it down, with short-term rentals. But you can imagine that probably has exacerbated the vacancy rate to the rate that it's at right now.
And then there are areas that close to the festival venues that the communities are being they include more short-term rentals, and there are areas that they're away from that venue and they include less short-term rentals. So we can probably take a look at our business license applications to see if we can get that data that has what is the short-term rental rates are in the city. I have a question from Facebook. Will more housing will be built in District 5? And I believe District 5 is the southern neighborhood of the city.
You want to go? Oops, lost Layla.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Go ahead if you'd like to answer that, Layla.
Sure, I'm here. Actually, we have one project approved for District 5, which is the crossing, which includes a diverse housing product from fourplexes to duplexes and single family. We also have approved that residential project. The name of it is Crossings. It includes 103 units, which is a mix of from fourplexes to single family. And also we have approved a Citrus Plaza extension, which is north of the Ralphs, and that include some apartment housing as well. There is another project which is in works, hasn't gone before the Planning Commission and City Council in its new revised version yet, which if it passes, it includes another 103 housing units as well.
And if I could jump in, I think that we have a question, Layla, I don't know if you saw it, asking about, have we considered an inclusionary zoning policy that could provide a funding source for affordable housing projects? So when we met with our city council and our planning commission, we actually talked about the idea of an inclusionary housing policy. And what inclusionary housing basically is when local governments make a decision to require a portion of housing, of a housing project be designated affordable. That could be 5%, it could be 10%, whatever the number is. And then that has to be made available and remain available as affordable housing for a certain period of time. There's usually what is called a covenant placed on those units, and that can range from 20 to 30 to 50 years, depending on what the policy says. So that's something that we talked about our council and commission with, and they, like all the items we talked about, they said, let's talk about it. Everything is on the table right now. So we haven't passed anything, but it's in the mix of the conversation.
That's correct. I have another question, which is, again, it goes back to the accessory dwelling unit. The questioner is asking, in Indio, can you do a garage conversion into a living space because of housing crisis? I can answer if you would like.
Sure.
So yes, we allow conversion of garages, and the reason is, yes, due to the housing crisis, the state passed this law that a second dwelling unit or accessory dwelling unit could include conversion of garages to those units. And the city passed an ordinance to be in compliance with the state law, and currently we allow that. And it's a matter of basically submitting plans to the city, and we do a plan check on it. If you convert your garage per the state law and per the state regulation, you don't have to provide any garage spaces anymore. So you can just convert it and perhaps park your cars on the driveway of, or if the street allows it, you can park it there.
And then there was another question stated, I noticed empty lots near Avenue 49 and Monroe Street. Is there a possibility for this area to be considered for condos or apartments? So there's a large piece of land there that actually has been approved. Initially, it was approved for apartments, and then it was ultimately the developer came back and asked the city to make that for condos. It does have affordable housing requirement, 35 of the units, which I believe is roughly about 350 units. So that project came in recently and asked the city for an extension of its approval, and the city granted 1 additional year. We have been in conversations with that party to talk to them about whether or not they want to continue forward with the condominium concept, or if they want to look again at apartments. We are getting a lot more interest in apartments in the city over the last 6 months. And so, and what we're hearing from the parties, both the market rate apartment developers and the affordable apartment developers, is that they feel that there is a growing market here, that they're willing to make the investments. So that property could be available, but at some point we anticipate it will be developed, and we're hoping that it will be for the more diverse housing product type we're talking about tonight.
And then there's another question here that is, they didn't see anything regarding the emergency shelters, manufactured home, farm worker housing within the survey.
Yeah, and Leila, I typed it back to them, but we'll definitely, we know that's a big part of the housing stock in India and important for the population. So we'll definitely include that in the survey when we post it to the city website.
Perfect. And then
Yeah.
there's again another question, which I think it went to all as well, about the a stakeholder meeting and the public participation. So maybe we should just provide a little explanation as why we are holding the stakeholders meeting and why there's no public participation at that meeting.
Sure.
I can speak back,
yeah,
Kevin.
Shannon.
Oh, go ahead. Well, these are just opportunities to talk one-on-one with folks, a little bit more intimate conversations. These are folks that have sort of a stake that provide housing in the city, developers, things like that. So it's, again, a chance to kind of meet with people that can work towards a solution for addressing housing issues in the city. So, we're all working together, and this is just kind of one-on-one engagement with stakeholders of the community. Kevin, do you want to speak to, I guess, making that presentation available on the website, or?
Sure. So, I mean, the idea of a stakeholders meeting is we give folks a chance to be really honest with us in a little bit smaller group setting, either one-on-one or small groups. And typically that's so that we can get honest, even critical feedback from folks, that we can then take that information and couple it with information we're getting this evening in other public forums. But if a person wants to be part of it, part of the, like Shannon said earlier, we can certainly accommodate that. What we will probably be doing is a broader stakeholder meeting where we'll invite folks together to come together, and in this virtual setting that we're in right now, we'll have a virtual group meeting, and then we'll be doing some individual conversations. So, if you have an interest, let us know, reach out to us through the email address that is on the city website, or if you have other information needs, you can contact us directly here at the city.
Yeah, we're always happy to hear your comments, if you want to email us. And I do want to point out, though, it's the residents should have representation. But that's why we're, tonight, that's why we're answering all your questions, and we're staying on late to really give you a voice and to make sure we aren't excluding anyone. So if you have, it's getting a little late, but if you have any additional comments, as Kevin said, we're happy to have any emails or any extra comments, participate in all the other meetings that are happening, and we can go from there.
And do we have
Priscilla,
two more
Oh.
questions or no?
Okay, I also opened it up for Priscilla. She wants to talk.
Hi. Yes, I'm sorry. So this is a little backtracking here, but I believe there was a gentleman earlier that was describing what was desired as dense housing units, mixed zoning with housing and business. Is that correct? Is that what Kevin responded to? Well, I would just like to state my perspective, and as it seems that these meetings are pretty much 50-50, I'll speak for this 50% on this side. I believe that dense housing, and studies show that dense housing units and mixed zoning with housing and businesses is always a formula for creating bigger city issues. We need housing that is further removed from pollution, meaning main streets, business industry, and spaces that are out, spaced out, and more satisfying living environments, healthier and more satisfying living environments. So I do not agree that dense housing, mixed zoning with housing and businesses is a desire by many of the inhabitants. And I would go as far as saying by the natives born and raised in Indio who have seen the changes over the decades, the last 30 years. There's a lot of growth, and we just feel that we're the ones that are being left out of the conversation. And so that's to say a lot. And yes, so realizing that residents should be considered stakeholders and should have that representation is could have been a proactive intention by the city. But at this point, the openness is welcomed and appreciated. So I myself, I will reach out to other residents to garner interest to see if there would be anybody who'd be interested to be a representative at this meeting. I missed the date on that. Can you please verify the date for the stakeholders meeting and see if we can get maybe 1 or 2 individuals from the community to attend as well, so that they can have the appropriate say in the desires. And last point, sorry, they piled up a bit here as the conversation continued. I just wanted to make note that Kevin's comment about the housing being or the housing need that's only being met right now, or mostly being met right now, are those gated housing communities with HOAs. I want to reframe that, and I don't want to say that's meeting any sort of need. Those are not housing needs. Those are wants. Those are additional desires. Those are housing developments that are catering to those who want a second vacation home or those who want units to rent out. They are not necessarily needs. So I would reframe that and say that those are the desired homes that are being built, because those are the ones that have been attracted and approved. So in moving forward, yes, representation is key by residents, and housing, living environments that are safe and healthy for residents of all socioeconomic brackets, that is free of pollution. And I think we should be thinking more along the lines of greening. I recall the last couple of meetings, we talked a lot about self-sustaining communities, greener, eco-friendly sustainabilities with solar panels or what have you, gardens. It sounded very ideal. And this conversation sounds like it got very far removed from those mentions back in the summer in August. So I just wanted to bring those back to the forefront because those are, I believe, the strong desires and most needs of our community. Thank you.
Hey, this is Priscilla. Thank you for correcting me. I had a quick question for you. Are you still on the line?
Yeah. I was not correcting. I'm just reframing
that's fine.
That it's not a need.
No, actually, I think you're right. I think you said it better than I did, so I appreciate you saying it.
Oh, thanks.
But when you were describing the kind of housing situation, it sounded like you almost had an example in mind. I was just wondering if you had an example in mind, if you've seen someplace or been someplace that we should look at as an example of what you're describing.
I think right now, maybe looking at the plans that are coming out of Santa Maria are good. I can't think of any particular housing facilities at the top of my head, but I have seen some cities that are in development with, the residents at the center of the choices. And there is a lot of transparency. There is a lot of community advocacy and advisory boards being created that are very how do you say, equally and proportionally representative. So I would start with that city. I can forward more information.
Perfect. Thank you. That'd be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Ms. Stella, you're absolutely right. The residents are the number one stakeholder in Indio. We just can't speak one-on-one with every resident in Indio, so that's why we're kind of doing these smaller groups. But certainly if you have residents that would be interested to talk to us individually, please send us their contact information and we'll email them a link to that stakeholder invitation. And then also the poll will be open through the end of April. I believe it's open through April 22nd, is that right? Kevin?
It's actually gonna be February 24th through April 12th. We're going to make some
April
changes
12th.
based on some of the comments this evening. So we'll launch it next Wednesday and then keep it open through April 12th. And then we're hoping is we'll have that feedback that we can then bring back to the next community meeting on April 22nd.
Thank you. Thank you. One last mention in the spirit of transparency and accessibility to information. I think a wider circulation of these meetings with more advanced notice of meeting days and times. And what I mean by more circulation of information is through all the medias of social platforms or what have you, not just in websites, community, community organizations, more circulation, because a lot of the times we catch this information like on the day of, and not everyone I think is, regularly checking to see what's happening in the daily governance or what have you. But yes, so advanced notices with more circulation. And I appreciate the responses on Facebook to the questions, because the last couple of meetings, I think that was an issue. So thank you for measuring up on that piece there. Again, thanks everyone for the dialogue.
Priscilla, can I put you on the spot again? This is Kevin.
Oh, sure.
I wanted to see, so we sent out a postcard to all the current addresses in the city, residential addresses. It was in English and Spanish. Did you get that? I just wanted to see if it got out to everyone.
I believe it was that cardstock, like double-sided.
It was a double-sided. It was in English and Spanish. It had this date and then the other dates on it. I just was wondering if you got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did, but snail mail kind of waits till the end of the week. more readily available information right on social medias. But
no, that's good.
No, that was received. Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. I just wanted to see if you got out.
Got it.
So we have a couple of more items if you guys are okay with me to read. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one is this, how can affordable housing be more accessible to undocumented folks? Rent is already difficult because of the barriers of required documents, etc.
Let's see.
Go ahead.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure there are some avenues for people. We can probably take a look into it to see if there's any avenues for people that they are not documented, and then maybe provide that information in our next workshop if we don't have the answer now.
Yeah, I'd be really honest. That's a hard question. I mean, there's a lot of answers on that, and so I think we should go and do a little bit more homework, because I don't want to answer erroneously or not appropriately. So I think, to Leila's point, we need to do a little homework on that question and see if we can come back with some factual answers.
Sure. And then the other one is somebody's asking the vacant property, which is on the southwest corner of Avenue 42nd and Monroe, needs to become an emergency shelter. It's a location near amenities, transit, and place where people who are unsheltered get pushed into and pushed out of. The land is vast. Again, I don't think the zoning and basically there's a development agreement on that property from 90s that does allow such use, but we are in our current zoning update and also in the housing element, we will consider, as we said, the shelters, manufactured homes, and other type of housing as well.
Okay.
Then there's another
Any other?
question. It says, will the plan address improving the city's first-time home buyer program?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we were part of this county program, and the city hasn't had a first-time home buyer program for a while, so we're getting back into that. And it's a start. I mean, I've worked in other cities that have fairly robust programs, and so we're gonna look into this to see if we can, utilizing at least initially the county resources, and then hopefully over time maybe build that back up, so that is a program that we're able to successfully run.
Okay, and then also they are there's somebody asking that we should have to let Marcos Palma and local Spanish media know, and you will have more input from the Spanish speaking community. You don't have to read this loud. Oh, I apologize, I already read loud. But it's a good input. Yeah, that's something that we can consider definitely.
Yeah.
And then I guess
Is that all?
I guess I just want to emphasize what Kevin said and what the team said, that if there's any questions, comments, Kevin put his email and I believe Jesus's email out. We have a web page for the housing element. So if you guys have anything regarding what a stakeholder should be interviewed, you can submit that, or any other questions, and there's a team here that we can collect all those questions and do the research and provide answer to it. So this is what basically our goal and our dream is, to get more participation and input.
I wanted to, this is Jesus Gomez, the Housing Programs Manager. I didn't want this meeting to end without me just saying a few words. I think the team covered a lot of good things here regarding the housing element update and what is involved with it. I wanted to just point out a few things that, Indio is constantly seeking opportunities to develop affordable housing. We talk about the market rate housing and the type of housing that's being developed now, and historically on the north side, single family homes and gated communities, et cetera. But we don't forget also through the work that I do and our team does in developing affordable housing, there is a rental housing project that is in the works currently. It hasn't started construction. We're applying for some grants to develop over 180 affordable housing rental units here in the city in a project near Jefferson and Highway 111. And there's also been other affordable rental housing projects that have been developed by the Coachella Valley Housing Coalition and other entities. Kevin also mentioned the partnership with the county and just recently, not only developing the program to create home ownership, but also being part of a pool of money that is now going to be available for developers and the city to be able to fund affordable housing projects, because these projects are all about the available money that is needed to develop these projects. And so I also wanted to take this opportunity to remind people that our community that we not only have this housing element update, but what was mentioned earlier by our DUDEC team is that there's also going to be a focus on strategies and policies that are pro-housing and are going to be looking at ways to create other housing opportunities, not just market rates. And so I wanted to remind our public and our community that there's still going to be more work to be done in that area. And so just wanted to point those things out. We do welcome the comments, and we are here, and I saw my email go up. If anybody has more questions of me in our housing section, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. We also have other programs and services beyond just development of housing and some of the things we do in planning, but resources on helping residents with eviction issues, questions on housing rights, etc. Again, that's something that can be sent to me and I could lead folks in the right direction. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesus. I just want to close real fast, and Eric, I'm going to ask you to translate. First of all, thank you for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Bueno, making sure I'm unmuted this time. Gracias a todos por unirse a la reunión. Apreciamos su tiempo.
We understand that doing these meetings virtually is more difficult than being in a room together, and we appreciate we're getting some comments on how to do the meetings better the next time, and we will take those recommendations to heart and strive to improve. So thank you for your comments on how to improve our meeting programs.
Sabemos que tener estas juntas en Zoom es difícil, a partir que todo tiene que ser virtualmente, y apreciamos sus comentarios acerca de cómo tener una mejor junta la próxima vez.
And I'm going to end with one request. There was a comment earlier that 30 people wasn't a lot in a city this size, and that's right. There should be a lot more people in this meeting. Housing is an important issue to this community. So for all those that are still with us right now, if you can be our foot soldiers and get the word out about the other meetings and the opportunities to give input, we'd really appreciate it, because this is an important topic and we're doing what we can to get the word out, but we would appreciate your help.
Alguien comentó que 30 personas en la junta no son muchos, y pues estamos de acuerdo. Entonces, si sienten que no es mucho, les vamos a pedir que inviten a sus vecinos, sus amigos que viven en Indio, y así podemos tener a más gente que participe en estas juntas.
Thank you, and have a great evening, and we will talk to you soon. And as Jesus and Layla and Shannon and Erica and I have all said, please feel free to reach out to us at any time.
Bye, everyone. Good night. Buenas noches.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Buenas noches.